Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. It is me, Kay. I'm here today to do Beyond the Gate Season 2, Episode 140. Okay, y'all, so I'm behind. And since I'm behind, these reviews are going to be very quick. I'm going to try. But anyway, nonetheless. So, picking up right where we left off. Tyrell and Samantha. You got Tyrell and Samantha. You got Leslie going on. You got Anita and her trying to get her voice back. You got the whole Carlton and Nicole thing. And then you got Ted and Andre. So let me start with Tyrell. I'm just going to get Tyrell out the way. Tyrell is just a teenager who unfortunately got to earn his stripes, you know. And sometimes, no matter how bad you want to tell teens, you know, X, Y, and Z, and no matter how much you want to protect them, sometimes they just had to experience certain things in order to understand your point. And this whole thing with him and Jessica, this whole thing with him and Jessica was just, you know, something that just had to happen. You know, Jessica had been trying to avoid it for a while because she actually really did like Tyrell. You know, they had grown close. You know, they've been spending as much time as they can together before, you know, them going off to college. But Tyrell has come up with this plan that, you know, during the week he's going to attend school, but on the weekends, starting on Friday, he's going to fly out to LA and stay with Jessica from Friday to Monday. He ran it by his dads. They asked him, have he lost his everlasting mind? They get into it. Words are exchanged because, especially, you know, from Martin, because Martin is I'm not going to say he's the more vocal parent, but he's the more outspoken parent. And then, you know, Smitty, you know, tried to reason with Tyrell and say, you know, like, Tyrell, we're trying to put this armor around your heart. We're trying to guard your heart. Meanwhile, Jessica is having a meeting of the minds with Samantha at Orphe Jeans, and they're talking or whatever. And so while this conversation with Tyrell and the dads are going on, Samantha and Jessica are having their own conversation. And even though, you know, Samantha and Jessica are close, Samantha, you know, tells Jessica, you know, I don't necessarily want to know what's going on between you and Tyrell, but that is my brother at the end of the day. Please don't hurt him. He can't take it. You know what I mean? And, you know, Jessica tells Samantha that she has gone to college. She's met her roommate. They spent some time there at school. They went to a party, you know. Jessica is just interested in what college has to offer, as she should be. And I think that, you know, it's only very slim that, you know, you make it through college with your high school sweetheart. It just is what it is. I mean, y'all may break up, experience college, and then, you know, get back together if both of y'all still single once college is over. But for the most part, it don't work like that. Unless y'all are going to school not in the same city, maybe the same state, maybe down the street, you know, I don't know. But typically, it just doesn't work out. But nonetheless, Tyrell, you know, storms out of the house. He ends up going to Orphe Jeans where Jessica is. You know, one of the dads did ask him before he left the house, did he run this plan by Jessica? And he says he did not. And so, you know, they're not in agreement with him trying to, you know, like force his way into making this whole thing with him and Jessica. I said Samantha, but him and Jessica work. And so by the time he gets to Orphe Jeans, you know, he runs the whole plan by Jessica. Jessica is like, you didn't even tell me about any of this. I don't think any of this is going to work. You don't know anything about my schedule. You don't know what I'm going to be into. I don't know what you're going to be into. We don't know if we're going to have time together. So Jessica basically just pulls the plug on this whole situation, as she should. And so Samantha ends up going back home to tell the dads everything what happens. And then Tyrell, you know, goes to Garland to look for his grandma or his grandpa, which when he got there, I was thinking about Anita and Vernon. I'm like, no, why would Anita and Vernon be at the hospital? Ted and Nicole, sorry, I still have to remember they are young grandparents. It touched, I'm like, oh, he's talking about Ted and Nicole. Anyway, neither one of them was at the hospital because they both was down to the country club. Anyway, I'm gonna get there. But nonetheless, they broke up. So while Samantha was at the house talking to the dads, she explained to both dads, you know, how Tyrell is, like how he functions and how he deals with loss or how he deals with high intense situations, because you know it has something to do with what he experienced as a young boy with June leaving. So he was all gas, no brakes with Jessica. Why do I keep saying Samantha? Anyway, moving on. Slightly, we have this situation with Ted and Andre. Ted and Andre are down at the country club talking. They do have a brief chat with Isaiah because Isaiah is there looking for Vernon. He had just left Eva, who was also at Orphans. Ted and Andre, basically, we kind of get a little bit of tea from Andre about the situation, not exactly full details. Andre tells Ted that something happened while he had his time in Europe, while he was grieving and doing this nomad lifestyle. I don't know if that anonymous number sent him a text on his phone or if he, you know, was trying to still look up that bottle of wine to see exactly what it was. But nonetheless, there was something going on. And so Ted basically asked him, like, what was up? And so Ted basically gives him the advice of being honest with Danny before everything completely comes out. Because honestly, I think if Andre was to have a conversation with Danny, it may, you know, nip Danny a little bit. But I think because Danny is hiding this whole situation with Bill, she probably will extend Andre more grace knowing what she's hiding. So, you know, or that might give her more motivation to come clean with Andre about what she did do with Bill. So either way, he, you know, Ted, you know, advised Andre to just go ahead and tell Danny whatever it is that happened and why it's possibly catching up with him. Andre did also ask Ted that, you know, if he could go back and repair his situation with Nicole and if he could change some things, would he? And he was just like, you know, I go back and forth with that all the time. And I, you know, I think Ted is just, you know, I'm not going to say he's in denial about the truth, but I do think that he thinks about Nicole more often than he admits. And so, Andre nonetheless is trying to figure out and make this decision. We see a brief interaction between Vernon and Leslie, which, you know, Leslie, a complete mess. She was actually very irritating in this episode. I'm just like, Leslie, girl, where is the change? You told this family that you was going to change. You was going to be a brand new Leslie. Here you is tearing down Vernon's nerves. Vernon said he don't have time for you. He got appointments. He have better things to do than sit here and argue with you. He don't want you living across. Why are you trying to make fetch happen, Leslie? Like, you trying so hard to, like, every time Leslie's on screen, I try to find a shred of compassion for Leslie, but my shred of compassion is just very thin because she's always trying to make something happen. Even when, you know, Isaiah overheard her and Vernon getting into it, Isaiah went to kind of, he tried to, like, de-escalate the situation or whatever. And Leslie basically tried to invite herself into the meeting with him and Vernon. And he was like, no, if I have any kind of, you know, things I need to talk to you about in terms of internships for for the students at your clinic, I can talk to you about that at the apartment. I don't got to talk to you about that right here with Vernon right now, girl, bye. And then, you know, she's starting back construction on her house, which I thought that was over with because I'm just like, okay, after the whole thing with the Duprees and Eva and Kat, I thought that she was going to try to give, you know, the Duprees space. I thought she was going to try to, you know, be more peaceful toward them. It just looked like all that's going out the window. Meanwhile, we have Anita trying to, you know, rehearse and try to, you know, warm up her vocal cords because she has this recording session coming up with Articulation, remember, for the reunion album, adding on Barbara's voices to the tracks. And she's struggling with that. She has a conversation with Vernon about that. You know, Nicole bumps into Carlton. Okay, as we know, Carlton ended up seeing Nicole and Kyle get on the elevator after Nicole had just, told him, I'm exhausted. I got to go home, child. I can't do this today. And so they was about to have a brief, they was about to have a quick, bite to eat and a quick drink at the country club before Leslie came over there and again stuck her nose in some business that don't have nothing to do with her. She just continues to antagonize Nicole, and I don't know why, because Nicole did absolutely nothing to her. I could see if she antagonized Ted and got on Ted's nerves all the time, because Ted is the one who, who is at fault all the way. But she keeps on antagonizing Nicole, and I'm just like, I just wish Nicole would just. But Nicole has tried to get her told time on time, and Leslie is the person who just unfortunately is gonna keep nagging and can't take the hint. I don't know why Leslie thought it was important for her to, reveal in front of Carlton, while Nicole and Carlton are clearly having a conversation that, Kyle's son Noah is working at her clinic. He is now a new manager. He done said how, he's been at home alone, and how his dad has just been night after night with Nicole and all this other stuff. A whole lot of. So I'm just like, at this point, Carlton was just like, I don't have time for whatever this is going on between you and her. I'm out. I got a consultation anyway. Come to find out, the consultation was with Eva. Leslie and Nicole go ahead and move on about their day. And Leslie, again, it begins to antagonize Vernon. But nonetheless, that leads Nicole to go to the house to have a conversation with Anita. And Anita, she basically talks to Anita about how she's feeling and how she doesn't want to commit to anybody right now. But she says that, but then the stuff that you're doing with Kyle is kind of like, you know what I mean? It's not screaming, not committed. Like, he's staying at your house. You're letting him, for lack of better words, live there, reside there. He has a whole home, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, weird. But nonetheless, Nicole, on the other hand, is telling her mama how she don't want to choose between, between Kyle and Carlton, and how Carlton, she's known Carlton all her life, and so she wanted to give him a chance because he always liked her. But then, this thing with Kyle happened so organically, and so we have here, there. And so basically, Anita was like, I'm here to therapize you today. Give yourself a deadline on how you want to have things figured out by, because that probably works best with you, instead of just constantly just free falling. She said, this gonna work for you. This necessarily don't work for Danny, but I'm gonna give you this advice for you. She was just like, but if you don't want to, she was like, you've been upfront and honest with all the other men. You can't be responsible about how they feel about, the truth after you've revealed it to them. So, it is gonna be what it's gonna be. Honestly, I just think Nicole needs to be by herself. I think Nicole needs to spend some time by herself, because there was a very quick transition in between her and Ted, separating, being alone, and then, dating. And then not only did she jump into dating, she jumped into dating two people. Like, I think that was way too much for Nicole. That's not the life in which she's accustomed to. And, I think she's biting off more than she can chew. I just think she needs to be alone. Then we have Eva, who is, feeling very self-conscious about her scars. I think I talked about this briefly on my last review. But nonetheless, Eva, we find out more how Eva feels about her scars. She says that it's very, like, it's affecting herself, like her self-esteem. She feels maimed, and she talked to Carlton about possibly getting her scars removed. But, Carlton told her that there were many things that they could try to do, but he advised against Eva going through with anything right now, because her body is not ready. Her body is still healing. She's fresh off surgery. I mean, for heaven's sake, she's still going through therapy right now. So, I mean, and I agree with Carlton, because I feel like, I know a lot of people do a lot of things out of vanity, but at the same time, you just have to be, aware sometimes that, your body is, even though you may run it like a machine and it runs like a machine, it's not a machine, and it does need time to heal and bounce back. And so I do think Carlton is going to end up having a conversation with Ted, I feel like. Because I think the way Eva was so emotional, I think that's going to, you know, push Carlton to have a conversation with Ted about, you know, how he was feeling post-op of her first 2 surgeries. He did say, you know, if her surgery team, once her surgery team clears her, he would be, you know, more than willing to operate on her. He was like, but even though operating on you, you know, that still wouldn't give you the whole disappearance. That would just minimize the appearance. And so what I do think, I think that not only does Eva need to probably have therapy about, you know, experiencing the tornado, but also going through a traumatic event while going through a traumatic event, you know what I mean? And her life was altered. She also could have lost her life. She may be experiencing a version of survivor's remorse. And also, you know, you don't want that to affect her image. So I do think that she does need to have a conversation. She told Carlton that she doesn't need therapy, but I do think that he should have recommended that for her, or at least put it in her chart. Because that was a major life event, a major life altering event. And she's trying to reacclimate herself back to life. And sometimes that is a transition. And sometimes, you know, we as humans, we try to minimize the things we go through just because we think we may have overcome them, but we don't necessarily understand sometimes how the long-term effects affect us. You know what I mean? Is there anything else I want to talk about in this episode? I think that is all. Eva does have a conversation with Leslie about how she feels. And Leslie does tell her basically the same thing that Isaiah told her. You know, that she's beautiful, that her scars are war wounds. They are proof that she's a miracle and she's still here in the land of the living, and that she has people who love her, and, you know, that's all that she should basically focus on. So we're going to see how everything goes moving forward. I will be back with episode 141. If you haven't already, check out my reviews. I have Beyond the Gates playlist, so you can go back and catch up on all my thoughts on all the episodes, as well as other shows that I review, like The Chi and All American. So if you would like, please check out those playlists as well. I will be back with more videos for Beyond the Gates. Like, comment, and subscribe. Deuces.